Good morning, friends and family of Hope Wesleyan Church. Today's children's sermon is kind of thinking about Pastor Paul's words that he's going to be sharing with you later about the realization and the joy and the amazingness of Jesus, this baby we just celebrated at Christmas, that he really is the Messiah, that he really is the one that they have longed for and awaited for, and the joy and the hope it brought to their souls. But before that time, there was a lot of confusion and a lot of messiness. And so I'm going to use bread and how I make bread to maybe help us think a little bit about how God uses messiness and simple things to bring us something beautiful and amazing that we can share and love others with through Jesus, who is being reminded of Jesus, who is the bread of life. So the first thing I want to talk about is oil. Oil is used in bread, and the Bible talks about oil being what they anoint people with when they had a special calling. And so oil is used in bread. Another thing that's used in bread is water. Water is very oftentimes compared to as the Word, or Jesus, this wellspring, the living springs of water. That, like in Psalm 1, you will be like a tree planted by streams of water. Those who follow Jesus, those who seek after the Lord, then your leaf will never wither when you take of the water of the Lord and of the Word. And then wheat. So this is wheat flour, and unless a grain of wheat falls and dies, it's never able to scatter its grain or be used to bless others and to actually grow. And through the dying of the seed of the wheat, we are fed and we feed others. So we take all these things, and through time, people have learned you can put them together, and this is just water and flour, and becomes a flour dough starter. It's called sourdough starter. And it is not very tasty when you eat it by itself. It actually sits around for weeks and weeks and weeks, and you keep adding more flour and water to it, and it just it actually rots together, which is kind of gross to think about. But it reminds me of the time when Jesus came. It was a kind of a rotty time, and honestly, this COVID-19 time has been kind of a rotty time. And we have the Word. We know there are anointed people living for the Lord. We know we have the bread of life, and we add these things together, and so it just seems, even though the times are long and they kind of seem sour, but Jesus comes, and he adds a little bit of salt. He says we're the salt of the earth, and we mix it all together. And that's what this is here. This mixing together is this mishmash of just water and oil and salt and flour. That's it. But what a mess. Who in the world wants to eat that? Here, take a bite. Just kidding. All right, so we work with that, and God takes time, and he uses these times of messiness, and you can't see it, but there's a lot happening in this doughy mess that we have. And I think there's a lot happening in this COVID-19 time too, and that we can take hope that something beautiful can be worked in it, even though it looks messy right now. Maybe during the time when Jesus was being born and through his life, things looked messy, and then there was the death on the cross, and that was even messier, and how could they understand that? But then the tomb. This is like a heavy cast iron pan, and I put this in the oven to bake my bread. Once it's all prepared and waited on, and we rise, and it rises, and I don't know, it's kind of interesting. Bread rises. Do you think Jesus rose from the dead? Did. And after that time, when he was in the tomb, after the bread had risen and baked in the heat of the fire, out comes this amazing loaf of bread. Do you see how gorgeous that is? Now, you can kind of tell I already cut into it, so I can make it easier for us to see, but Jesus is the bread of life. And it says in this story that Pastor Paul is going to read to you that at the end, they begged Jesus. They had met Jesus on the road, and they begged him to stay with them, but they had been kept from seeing who he really is. And at the end, they said, Jesus, please spend more time. Or they didn't know it was Jesus. He said, please spend more time with us. And he said, sure, I will. And he sat down with them, and that when he broke the bread, they realized who he was. Their eyes were open. Do you think that when you eat bread, which we pretty much eat almost every day, most people do, and all over the world we eat bread, which is just amazing, but we break this bread and we partake of it, and we can think of the glorious way that God takes the messiness in our lives, like this, and the simple things like water and flour and oil and salt, and he can create something absolutely beautiful in your life. And I just pray that you will learn to trust him during this time of mishmash and the messiness of COVID-19, and gain your hope from the Lord, who can create beauty in your life.